Okay, so we're back for this third video, and here in this video, what I would like to do is to try to help you understand how you move from something interesting you may come up with in the business press or something that interests you, and how do you frame it from this first interest to something that could be studied, right? So let's try to see how to do that. As I said in the previous video, I said, yeah, maybe look at places, platforms, media where some academics talk about social issues. That's a good way to do that. And actually, there is a site that I mentioned, which is called The Conversation, which is precisely a platform to do that, to try to connect academics with the rest of society. And so my proposition now is to just go to this site, take one example, and then try to see how we can work out something from this. So here, let me share my screen. So here, yeah. So actually, okay, so here, if I go to the conversation, so you will see, so basically, here what you see on the screen, I think, is so here is a link to the French, the French version of the conversation. Obviously, at the time when I record everything, well, there is a lot going on with Biden, but just the conversation is a website to connect academics from social sciences. So here there may be political scientists, but there are also people in economics and management too. There are topics related to environmental issues, politics and society, health, etc., etc. Since the video is in English, my proposition is that maybe we switch to the US version of the site. So once again, here, no surprise, there is a lot going on the presidential election in the US, but not only. So job policies that offer generous unemployment benefits create more happiness for everyone. So this would be typically something interesting. It must be based on the research, by the way. So for those of you who may be interested into like unemployment benefits in the US, that may be really interesting. But let's focus on economy and business. And here, yeah, so I'm competitive. Okay, well, when I scrolled it, I found this article, which I think is really interesting, because a week ago there was this vote called Proposition 22 in California to ask Californian citizens whether actually California should consider Uber and Lyft drivers as employees, as the recent regulation in California did, or if they should still be considered as independent contractors with increased benefits. And actually there was a lot of debates going on, and the people in California voted for the resolution for Uber and Lyft to say that drivers should be considered as contractors. And actually there is an article here written by Juliet Schor. Juliet Schor is an academic in the US working on the sharing economy. So let's imagine that you're interested in sharing economy topics. Well, this is typically the type of articles that you may be interested in. So my proposition here is that first you look at it. So maybe make a Google search for California voters decide Uber and Lyft drivers are contractors as gig workers continue to search for a livable wage. You read the article, you stop the video now, and we'll be back like in, and yeah, so you read this and you think about the potential ways that, well, you could theorize on the topic of the article, So would you theorize it from a sociological point of view, psychological one, Strategic one, what are the different lenses that could be used to question the problems raised in this article? So please stop the video for 10 minutes, take time to read, then take 10 extra minutes to try to think about potential ways to frame the topic of the article for a research master. And then we'll be back on a discussion and I will propose 2 or 3 ways that you could use to go deeper, right? Okay. So I'll go back to the presentation and let you work on this. Okay, so I assume that you've been playing the rules of the game and that now we are going to be able to discuss. So I did the exercise myself, so I went through this article and thought, well, if I had to do it myself, what would be the interesting topics that I would find in this? So just maybe what we could do is, come back to the article. Really, I think the conversation is great because it's a great way as well to find some academic sources, and to link what Juliet Schor is saying with her own academic work. So here, if you look at it, for example, look at the links. That's really an important advice that I would make. So, for example, she comes back to this fundamental question of whether platform workers should be considered as independent workers or full-time employees of platforms. It's a big legal issue. And if you open it, you have like other articles from New York Times. This is not academic, but still it's really important to, for example, if you look at this other, you have plenty of resources that are linked in the article. And also, you have academic sources. For example, when Juliet Schor says, I have been studying gig labor for nearly a decade, and here she's making a link on actually her latest book in California University Press, After the Gig, How the Sharing Economy Got Hijacked and How to Win It Back. It's really super interesting because for those of you who may be interested in the sharing economy and like this drift of platforms toward pure market-driven logics at the expense of more equalitarian logics, etc. This book is spot on, right? So here it's a great resource for those who would be interested in that. And here also there is a link towards her own work, so on dependence and precarity in the platform economy. And so here you have like this question of precariousness. So for those of you who may be interested in human resource aspects of sharing economy, it's also a great resource. And you see it's really up to date. So just here, the first point is just look deeply at the references when you find something that you find interesting. That holds true as well for academic readings, but we'll develop some specific items on that too. So here, California voters. So here, basically, if you've read the articles, basically what she explains is the global debate on this Prop 22, actually saying, well, that the big question is whether workers should be considered as independent contractors or employees. And basically what she says is that it's not so simple. You have this idea of full-time employees. It doesn't really work for that type of work. And workers are at the same time wanting to get more money out of their activities. But at the same time, they also want some ability to work independently, self-organize, etc., etc. And so that's what she develops here in Reluctant Employees. It's like they support it, but at the same time they fear of losing their independence. And so she's trying to propose a third through this idea of worker cooperatives, you know, and worker cooperatives are really interesting because here, well, the idea is to take the organizational model of the cooperatives, meaning that the workers own the organization, you know, they have a share in it, they have a voice in it. And here she is suggesting that actually a very important innovation in platforms is this movement of platform cooperatives, where actually people who produce a service also own the platforms. And so they earn a lot more than the classic platforms who want to take the money out of the transactions. You know, here part of this transaction fees go to the producer themselves. So it's a much more egalitarian way, and also governance is shared with these people. So that's an important innovation that is really stressing on this article. Also here, I was saying, look at the links. Here, our own research is talking about that. So just and democratic platform, possibilities of platform cooperativism. So by Juliet Schor and Samantha Eddy from Boston College. And so here also it's an academic work with plenty of references, as you see. And at the end of the article, you have also plenty of references that may be really useful for you if you work on this, you know. So we'll have more dedicated time on academic sources in a later video, but I think really look at the conversation because that's really, really useful. So now that we all agree on, these elements. So here is how I would work personally if I had to, you know, make possible inputs on Schor's article on the gig economy. I think there are plenty of different inputs possible. So once again, look at the references. I think it's a good advice. But the points of interest I would spot after watching this video would be the following. First, some of you may be interested in the business model impacts of regulation, you know, because, for example, if you decide that actually the workers should be considered as independent contractors, or on the opposite side, if you consider that they should be considered as full-time employees, it makes a ton of difference in terms of the profitability of the business model for the platform. So here you could have a specific entry on the business model impact of regulatory decisions. So that would be perfectly legitimate and very interesting for a research master. There would be also an interesting broad entry on the social controversies around platforms and labor market and labor issues, and try to draw an international comparison. That's still very broad, you know, but that's a possible entry that you could make. A very interesting entry that she's making is about this organizational innovation within platforms, you know, and this idea of platform cooperatives. And this is really a good entry for making, you know, an original research master, because that's like an emerging debate within the sharing economy and the platform business models. And so there is a lot to dig into that. And here, for example, a possible topic would be to compare the motivations of platform workers when they work in classic platforms, market-driven platforms such as Uber, TaskRabbit, Airbnb, or I don't know what, versus platform cooperatives. Does it change their motivation, their behaviors? Do they actually engage into the governance of these platform cooperatives? Do they actually want it? And also a lot could be explored on platform cooperatives, on their emergence, you know. Why do they emerge? Also, what are the barriers to their emergence? Because there may be a lot of barriers, capitalistic barriers, motivational barriers, cognitive barriers, and this would be also a very interesting topic for a master thesis. Also, if you're interested in this Prop 22, I think a last topic would be to focus on the non-market strategies of the platforms themselves. You know, how do platforms try to influence regulations? That's really an interesting topic, I think. And in the US, there was some publications on the fact that actually Uber and market-driven platforms invested a lot in public campaigns to have this Prop 22 agreed by the population. So they invested roughly $200 million, I think, whereas opponents only had $20 million to invest in it. And so that would be really interesting to explore around this kind of resolutions. What are the non-market strategies of the different actors and how to analyze it, right? So yeah, that's it for me. I hope it was illustrating enough. And so here is how you can work a little bit on how you move from business press or like academic readings and how you use that to construct a research topic. Of course, we're not fully there yet, but we still have some ideas of where to look at, and how to link an object, here the sharing economy and platforms, with possible academic entries into it. So now that this is done, we still have to work on like academic sources, methods, etc. And this is the things we're going to explore in the next videos. So